Well,
Yeah.
do you know the best way to telegraph that you're a responsible steward of long-term capital?
What's that?
Sponsor the New York City Marathon. Because if you can go the distance on the streets, you can go the distance in the spreadsheets.
Did you steal that from Eric Adams?
I might have. Welcome back to the Promote Podcast, your insider guide to the money and mania of the CRE markets. Hit 10 here with Will.
Hey.
This week, we discuss the great changing of the guard at real estate dynasties. The second and third generations are taking the helm of some of the industry's most prominent families.
And taking over some of the industry's most prominent lobbies with their artwork.
Bet they are. And there's been a barrage of engineered press to tell the market all about it. We then head west for some California love. CEQA, the environmental law that was turned into a tool to torpedo new developments, has been gutted, taken out. Huge win for builders in a state that doesn't really offer too many of them. And finally, we chronicle the taking of Madison 625, an office tower that became a battleground for some of New York's biggest titans. Some crazy maneuvering there, Will.
It has a lot of characters in the Promote cinematic universe involved, so excited to get into it.
Absolutely. Should we just start there?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
A shout out to our sponsor, Vesto, which gives CRE players a single, clear point of access for all their bank accounts. More on them in a bit. So you wanna dive into the history books first, or what? Should we start in the 1950s with Moshe Ginsburg?
Sure. Well, I mean, why don't we even go back further? So first, these Indians had Manhattan, and then
$26 later.
60 guilders is how.
Oh, my bad. Of course, I should know that from Chisholm. My bad. What kind of New York real estate guy am I?
So, yeah, in the 1950s, Moses Ginsburg, who developed the Carlyle Hotel, built a tower on Madison Ave that was the HQ of cookie giant Nabisco.
Yummy.
And later was involved in one of the great business books of all time, Barbarians at the Gates, about the buyout of RJR Nabisco.
Yeah. Oh, that's the largest LBO ever until Blackstone EOP.
I forget if it was Blackstone EOP. It might have been...
It's the Blackstone EOP one with Roy March's hair getting cut by John Gray after it's all done.
Right. Okay, that may be right. And by the way, for all the young kids out there, go read Barbarians at the Gates. It's just an electric book.
Fantastic book.
So in the late 80s, Steve Ross, the future goat, at that point, he was just what is a young goat? A ewe? No, that's a sheep.
A kid. He was a kid.
He bought a 50% stake in the building and then did a huge renovation. And then in potentially the most 80s tenant move of all time, he got Revlon to come in as an anchor tenant.
I'm picturing him kind of schmoozing Ron Perelman, or was it Perelman at the time? I don't know if he was involved yet.
Oh, indeed, it was Ron Perelman. It might have been when he was married to Ellen Barkin.
Oh, wow. Okay, so a lot of big names in there. So Ross comes in, he buys a 50% stake, and essentially gives the tower kind of a new life and sex appeal. 2001, he cashes out pretty big.
Yeah, sells his stake back to the Ginsburg, so they own 100% of the new-ish tower.
We're getting into all of this, and it'll become clear just why. So 2004, the suits come in. This is Mark Holliday, the young man who's just taken over what will become New York's largest commercial landlord, SL Green Realty. So Mark has something to prove. He wants to make some big deals to really put SL Green and himself on the map. So he buys into the leasehold. I think it'd be useful to talk here, well, maybe a little bit about ground leases and separating the fee and all that.
You beat me to it. So for those who don't know, there's two aspects to real estate ownership. Well, if you're Bill Zeckendorf, there's like 9. But generally speaking, you have the fee simple interest and the leasehold interest. The fee simple interest is simply like the fee to the dirt.
The dirt, yeah.
So you own the ground on which the building sits. If you buy the leasehold interest, you are leasing the ground and then operating the building.
So you have your landlord is the person or the company that owns the dirt.
Exactly.
And some of the more famous ones in the city are the Corinne family, Sol Goldman, etc. And they've made quite a wonderful generational business, just upping the rents every so often on these buildings.
I remember when I worked at Starwood, someone said the best job in real estate was being at the Goldman family business. I think that's actually changed quite a bit. They've had some problems since then.
It might have just, a little bit.
But he said at the time, basically, you might get workers' comp at the Goldman family from paper cuts from opening all the envelopes on the first of every month for all the rent they got.
It really was that simple once he set it up.
Yeah.
So here, SL Green buys the leasehold, which means they collect the rents on the tower itself. They're the landlord for all the tenants that are coming in, but then they kick up rent every year to the owner of the fee.
This is actually something that is pretty common for families. So if you're the Ginsburg family and, in the late 80s, you might not want to come out of pocket to renovate the building to attract Revlon. So that's why you bring in Steve Ross. And then in the 2000s, they decide we don't actually want to operate this building at all. It's a lot of work. Why don't we sell the leasehold, cash out a huge amount of money, and then get paid, millions of dollars a year to literally do nothing?
And these are typically structured as 99-year deals with what are known as FMV resets, right? Fair market value resets. So
it depends on how you structure it, because you can, again, one of the wonderful things about real estate is
you can do anything you want as long as the other guy agrees to it.
Exactly. But generally speaking, yeah. So they'll have a 99-year term with fair market value resets every 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever term. Fair market value reset basically means what's the actual fair market rent for this property at a given point, and that's what the rent will reset to. It's not like a CPI increase where you look at the CPI number and say, okay, it was 2.6%. That's what the rent goes up. You have a whole process you go through and you say, hey, this rent that was $5 million a year, it could be 20. And that's what the rent goes to. And so those things are very dangerous to buy the leasehold on, because if you don't have clarity on the FMV reset, it could really impact the value, because that money you can't get back. Like, it just goes straight to the ground rent. This has been an issue on the Chrysler building.
This has been an issue on a lot of trophy towers in New York.
It's been an issue on, I think, a deal I looked at in Atlanta.
Lever House as well?
No, in Atlanta. It was like the W Buckhead or something. They had a fair market value reset, and our downside case was like the rent was the fair market value of the rent was going to like 20x or something.
Ouch.
Our point is that this is very, very impactful to the value of the building.
Particularly a catalyst for the rent going up can be when there's a change in ownership of the ground.
Yeah.
And that's what happened here. So 2013, your boy, retail baddie, Ben Ashkenazy, steps in.
I noticed that you didn't call him billionaire real estate investor.
I did
Ben
not,
Ashkenazy.
for a very particular reason. Unlike what the trade press says, I chose my words pretty carefully here. So Ben Ashkenazy comes in. He buys the fee for $400 million. Now, that is a significant investment, right? And he's only getting, very importantly, $5 million a year from SL Green in rent. So we kind of expect something to happen here.
That is a very low cap rate for those of us who don't really feel like doing the math.
Correct. And so in 2016, a couple of years after they buy it, Ashkenazy's partner, Mike Alpert, actually says this. He's like, and let's put some context here. Manhattan's going crazy. This is the time of condo developments all over the space and super high-end condos.
We also had, beyond just condos, you had hotels as well. We have the contractually obligated Baccarat, highest price per key in North American history at $2 million per key.
That is the full name, as you said a couple episodes ago. Correct. So you're seeing all this activity in Manhattan. All these sites are being reimagined as hotels and condos, etc., which means for the people who own the fee, they can go to their leasehold owner and say, you know what?
Price of the brick going up.
You want those corners.
You definitely want those corners. So Michael Alpert says the site should be worth $1.4 billion. So Holiday can kind of see the writing on the wall, but this is, we should say a little bit about Mark Holiday here. He's a suit. He talks in investor earnings about, IRRs and stuff. But I think Holiday at his heart, at his core, is a bare knuckle brawler kind of guy.
You don't become the chairman of NYRA unless you really are a riverboat gambler. So he's got that in him.
He's a man who takes his chances. And here in 2018, he kind of executed, he made his move, let's say. What did he do?
Ben Ashkenazy didn't put up $400 million to buy this. He went and borrowed it. And he borrowed it from, I think, like a very terrifying guy, Chris Hone.
One of our favorites, yeah, Chris Hone. He runs the innocuous-sounding Children's Investment Fund.
Yeah.
But it's basically like a pretty sharp hedge fund.
One of the sharpest. Also, his divorce filing is public. I highly recommend people Google it and read it. It is out of control.
Is this a Bravo episode yet or what?
I think it was the largest divorce settlement in English history, but it talks a little bit about like how good his returns have been and how much money he's made, and it is something. So this guy is very, very sharp. His firm is very, very sharp-elbowed.
And also a pretty active lender in Manhattan, should be said. I think
yes.
432 Park Avenue is them.
They lend a bunch of money to Related at Hudson Yards.
Oh yeah? I didn't know that. Okay,
Yep.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this money. It's a mezz loan. Mezz loan should be paid on time because of many different reasons. One is a mezz loan can be a path to UCC foreclosure.
Yep, and Ashkenazy was delinquent on the debt.
He was. So what happens here? A Mark Holiday sees an opening.
So he buys a piece of the debt, and Ashkenazy sort of understands, oh, I let the fox into the hen house.
He really does. And so his lawyers in 2021 said the following: it should be reasonably apparent that something else is driving this behavior. Basically, they know that there's going to be trouble down the road.
There's trouble right here in River City.
Well, you got trouble, my friend. Right here, I say trouble right here in River City.
In 2023, Ashkenazy does what he telegraphed he would do. He 4x's the rent and goes from about $5 million to about $20 million. And that's a kind of rent hike that would basically wipe out SL Green's returns on this kind of deal.
What's so funny is that that's still only a 5 cap on his $400 million purchase price. And I think his whole point was, I'm going to do this. I'm going to wipe out the leasehold owner and I'm going to take the building for $400 million. And that's going to be my basis.
Yeah.
I think that was his whole plan. However, remember, SL Green was sort of the snake eating itself in this, where they own the leasehold, but then they own the mezz. And
what's the Latin word for that? Ouroboros? Something like that?
Don't ask me.
So Holiday has a piece of the mezz that is now delinquent. What can he do?
He can foreclose
via the UCC foreclosure mechanism, which basically lets the mezz lender seize the property. You get first dibs on the property.
And you have to step into all the liabilities.
You have to step into all the liabilities, but importantly, there's no like years of courtroom wrangling on this.
And if you're SL Green, you immediately cut the rent. So that goes away.
It's amazing. So they're gone. Ashkenazy's out. He's gone. There's nothing he can do about it.
Indeed.
So in 2024, Holiday and SL Green make their move. They sell the property for just north of $600 million, and it's a pretty familiar face that's the buyer.
The GOAT, Steve Ross.
Well, is it the GOAT or is it Blau? But yes, it is related steps back into the building.
It is the patent of Ross.
The patent of Ross. So related that owned the building in 1986, brought Revlon in, got out of the building sometime in the 2000s, comes back in here. And so you wonder what they're going to do. You wonder what the equity's coming from. And they had already lined it up. They had a pretty deep-pocketed partner. I think one of the deepest-pocketed partners in the world.
Yeah. And also, let's just say that this is iconic location. Like, it is...
Yeah, pretty good. 58th and Madison, right?
Yeah, between 58th and 59th. Like, it is prime. And what you could do here is a lot of different things. And they brought in, as you said, the deepest of pockets, the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, PIF.
It's incredible. And PIF doesn't do too many of these deals, but they're in here. And we don't have the full cap stack in front of us. There's a report that PIF has already kicked in $200 million. Do you think Related has any equity in this project?
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Like a little piece.
Little slice.
Little taste.
Yeah. There's been rumors out on the street that the Saudis were looking to build a private hotel for their gigantic royal family, but that didn't really pan out.
I know, that would have been cool though, because what's funny is there's sort of these legendary stories in the hotel world at the Barclay in London or the Four Seasons in DC, where you might be trying to book a room in like a random Tuesday and they're like, we're out. And they're like, how can you be out? This is a random Tuesday. And they're like, oh, the Saudis are here. They took the whole hotel from us.
Saudi royal family is here, and the suite that you wanted for your wife and you for the honeymoon is being occupied by a falcon.
Yeah.
So that didn't happen. What are they doing instead?
I think it remains to be seen, but it could be a pretty prime office building, which is one of the things that is getting funded up and down Madison and Fifth Avenue are these trophy office towers. The
kind that Jeff Blau likes to talk about a lot at Hudson Yards. So this kind of fits in with their thesis of new development office.
Right. And again, in the Related playbook, which is something I think we're looking forward to digging into in a future date, in a future episode.
Yes.
They...
Masters of de-risking. Absolute goats.
Yeah, because they do all these things. They do the hard work, and then they get recapped out, but they stay in for the asset-light fees, which everybody likes. And also make money off their own balance sheet investments. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. There's no one better at this type of campus development than Related.
And what I love about this story is that one of the coolest recurring themes in New York real estate is like when someone comes into a building and then leaves, but leaves the door a little bit open to make a move a couple decades down the road.
Yeah.
You don't completely lose the love for these properties. And I love that.
You love all your children equally, but some more than others.
Overwhelmed by a mass of bank accounts? Most CRE players find tracking cash across banks and project LLCs to be a huge pain. Enter Vesto. With real-time balances, transactions, and cash flow monitoring, Vesto gives you a single, clear point of access for all those accounts. You can see every account balance and transaction in real time and save the time and headache of logging into each one. Vesto has worked with over 100 CRE firms, and you can go to vesto.com to see how they can help you. That's vesto.com, and tell them the Promote sent you. It's really rare to see California builders score a big win, and it's even more improbable that it's on this issue. We're talking about CEQA. It's an environmental law that's been around since the 70s. In theory, it was supposed to be a way to study the environmental impact of a new project. In practice, though, it became a weapon to beat developers into submission, death by delay. And now we're finally seeing pretty monumental legislation to neutralize it. So that's a very big deal in California.
It's huge. And so CEQA stands for the California Environmental Quality Act. And it was signed by then Governor Ron Reagan.
Ronald to the rest of us, but Ron to Will, because that's how it goes.
Exactly. Ronnie R.
Where's the rest of me?
So it was one of those things where when it was signed, no one really understood the full implication of it. And then within a couple of years, people realized, oh, this is the full toolkit to stop any development for any reason.
For any reason. I think it's the perfect illustration of the law of unintended consequences. Like this shows you exactly how that works.
Totally. It started off with a good idea, right? We shouldn't pollute as much. If you look at the 50s and 60s and all the growth we had, like the Clean Water Act happened for a reason. Like the Clean Air Act happened for a reason because people were dying from lead poisoning and all of these horrible things that we did. And there's mountains of litigation, and the entire tort industry was sort of like made around these massive class action lawsuits about pollution. So it came from a good place. It did. But it was warped pretty quickly and basically stopped housing from being built in California.
It's hard to overstate how much it was used to basically stop new developments. And it could be like as simple as if I'm a liquor store owner and I don't want another project coming up near me, I could file for a CEQA action and I could basically slow that down.
You had fossil fuel companies filing under CEQA to stop green energy projects from being built.
You also had really, and this is important, you also had really vocal critics of CEQA use CEQA when it counted.
You got to do what you got to do. But Mayor Rick used it to block his rival Hackman's Television City.
Just recently, and he said, I don't really keep track of all the individual, stuff. It's like, it reminded me of...
Right, yeah, buffer. The family had a lot of buffers.
Yeah, there were a lot of buffers. Like, I didn't know what was going on. So Caruso's used it, random people have used it, and most importantly, it's become like a NIMBY arch weapon.
Totally. And you can look at the housing that's been built in California. I think, I will show off my abundance bro creds here. But there was a stat that I think it was in Lakewood, California, at the peak of the post-World War II building boom. Builders completed a house there every 7.5 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you look at California, they built fewer houses in the 70s and the 60s, fewer in the 80s and the 70s, fewer in the 90s and the 80s, and so on and so on. And essentially what we've now done is created this massive housing shortage, which has, again, all these downstream effects that are just really harmful to society. And people are getting priced out. It's driving...
It all stems from a lack of housing, and a lot of it comes back to CEQA.
Yep, it does. So people had been trying to do this for years, hadn't really been a ton of progress. And then, the bill was part of the legislative agenda in the California Senate, and Mr. Abundance himself, Gavin Newsom, signed it.
There's a lot of criticism of Newsom, and much of it is founded, but I think his hair is like, when I'm his age, if I have that hair, I'm just going to consider myself the luckiest man on earth. It's fantastic. The slick is perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
I'm a Dapper Dan man.
I mean, he looks like a Disney villain.
He had a pretty compelling, I think he made a statement. He said the following: the world we invented has been competing against us. We have to perform. Like, enough is enough. California is lagging the world on building new housing. And if this is a major impediment, we've got to take care of it. The LA Times, which normally plays these things down the line, in their excellent analysis, which I'll put in the show notes, they had the following. They said, no more 1,000-page studies of soils, the shadows the buildings may cast, and traffic they may bring. No more risk of CEQA lawsuits from angry neighbors. And to sum it up, what this means is CEQA can no longer be used on basically any proposed lower mid-rise project, which is already zoned for multifamily. in urban cores. That's the gist of it.
Right. And a lot of different property types are exempted from it. Advanced manufacturing, so like you would imagine chips or other stuff that's going to help the California economy, those are exempted in an effort to try to make it easier for companies to add space and bring jobs to California. So what I think is ironic about this whole thing is that, we've talked about last week how you have all these folks who say like, I'm never investing in New York or California because of all the regulations.
Zoran bad.
Yeah. And what's funny is like, if someone came out and said, I don't want to buy multi in California because of CEQA and it's going to nuke supply, like, I think that's a much more valid reason than
100%.
All the other stuff. So it's just very funny that like, let's just say this is great for California. It's good for everyone. It will increase multifamily supply, but them's the breaks.
I wonder, though, is this like enough to shake off California's building malaise? Because again, we have rising materials costs, we have tariffs, we have labor shortages, we have a bunch of other factors that make it quite hard to build in California.
Without it, there was no shot. So now there at least is a shot. And again, this is going to lag. It's going to take 2-3 years before stuff even if you start today, it's going to take that long to build something. But at the same time, these markets like New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, they have rent elasticity. It kind of costs to build what it costs to build. The land is really the difference. And yeah, you'll have like higher wages for someone in New York than you would in Alpharetta, Georgia. But in New York, you can get $100 a foot for a rental building. And in the middle of the country or elsewhere, like you're struggling to get like 22. And I think you'll see more folks trying to build there.
The broader, I think a couple of weeks ago, we talked about vibes being really important when it comes to developing and just being in the real estate business. This is one thing that I think after decades, California developers will feel like, okay, the universe isn't conspiring against us on every turn. This is a major, major win.
With the repeal of CEQA, not in my backyard is going away because there are not going to be any backyards because it's all going to be mid-rise apartments.
Let's hope so. Let us hope so. A reminder, the Promote podcast is quickly becoming the water cooler for CRE's biggest players. Listeners are obsessed. I mean like tattoos on the chest obsessed. We recently cracked into Apple's top 100 podcasts in the business and investing category.
And if you want to get in front of our audience of deal makers, influencers, rich people, Nepo babies, trust fund kids, West Village girls,
allocators, all of it.
The whole 9 yards. Hit us up at partnershipsatthepromote.com. That's partnershipsatthepromote.com. So normally we have Hiten tee up a topic and let me rant, but there's been something in the water the last couple of weeks that we just really needed to let the man cook on. So Hiten, we've seen across a variety of publications, the Financial Times, the New Yorker, all over the place, Wall Street Journal, where generational real estate families have been profiling their second and third generations, and often in very interesting ways that don't necessarily relate anything to investing, developing. Go off on this for a little bit.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, this is a pet topic for us and the Promote in general. I started noticing that there's been an uptick in these puffy pieces in a lot of the trade publications, but also in the mainstream publications about some of the greatest families in New York real estate, in U.S. real estate writ large. There's some kind of contagion where there's been piece after piece, and in some cases, a family's scions will get profiled in successive weeks in two competing publications and say very much the same thing. Did you read the Sam Rudin piece or the Rudin family piece in Commercial Observer and TRD?
Of course I did.
It is very hard for an editor to resist an offer like this. A little bit of media inside baseball. A public relations person comes in and says, hey, we're going to give you full access, which means your person's going to sit for a portrait. We're going to give you an in-depth interview, and we're also going to have the patriarch of the family pop in to say a few words, and we're also going to give you access to like all these bigwigs to give you nice quotes about them. It is hard for a publication to turn that down.
So why would you do that if you're one of the families, though?
You might be looking to raise outside capital, maybe, and so you need to tell people like, hey, we have a new generation that's come in. They understand this business. They have the pedigree. They've come up in this business, and now they're calling the shots. That could be it, but it also could be like, hey, I noticed that this scion got a piece in this magazine. I want my own, right? It could be a little bit of that too.
I'm genuinely struck because we made a joke about the art. It's literally in almost all of these. Just look at whenever you see a real estate scion profile, how many times he goes, I wasn't really interested in the family business, but then I found some cool local artist in Bushwick and I bought their painting for $97,000 and put it in the lobby of our studio rental building.
And then our occupancy magically went up.
It's uncanny. And a lot of the families don't raise external capital or historically haven't.
And they haven't had to because their buildings have just been cash flow cows.
So we've talked a lot about how Starwood, Blackstone, those types of guys have to play the media to help raise capital.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if your fortune was made on New York City office and that office has changed
Quite dramatically. Yeah. In the case of the Rudins, in the case of the Durst, all of them.
Yeah. Does that necessitate a rebrand and saying we are not just, cashing the checks from our Fifth Avenue office. We are dynamic. We are doing conversions. We're being thoughtful.
We're not just a man or a woman who's going by gut. We understand capital markets. We have experience coming up in these kind of more corporatized worlds, and we can speak to LPs and we can form our messaging. That's the broad kind of goal, I think. And what you'll notice if you're obsessed enough like we are, is that the messaging is very, very subtly tweaked based on each publication. So in the Wall Street Journal, the Rudins will sit down and they'll give an interview about capital allocation and strategies with debt and repositioning, etc. Then they go to Commercial Observer and they talk about, I'm going to quote you, our great-grandfather was a long-distance runner, which is why his two sons chose to sponsor the marathon in his honor. And it's basically kind of a nod to longevity and going the distance, etc. And you can tell there's a TRD piece that I think came out uncannily, I think the same day. And there's a line in there that says, Samuel Rudin had been an avid long-distance runner, and when he died in 1975, the family became a sponsor of the New York City Marathon. This is very careful shepherding of the narrative by the minders of the families. Those things don't happen by fluke.
Almost more impressively, in my opinion, is they get real hitters to speak to them. I mean,
you got 100%.
You got Mr. 42-inch vertical himself talking about what a good landlord they are. Steve Schwartzman at 245 Park.
It's amazing. As I said, like when you're on the other side of it and an editor is approached by someone saying, you've been wanting to talk to Schwartzman for how long? 10 years? I'm going to get you 15 minutes with Schwartzman. He's going to say nice things about the family. And you can't say no to that for the most part. So I guess the big question for me is like, if I'm a potential LP or I'm a current JV partner or a potential lender, do I care about this kind of thing? Does it change my approach when I see Sam Rudin on the cover or Michael Rudin on the cover? Like, what is this all about?
I got thrown out of my family business, so I don't know. No, I think it's really hard because if you've made the money and you've created this institution, just definitionally, the second generation or third generation is not going to have the same challenges. They're not going to be forged in the fires that you were. Like everything in life, it comes back to what they say in Noble House. One of my favorite novels, where Lincoln Bartlett says that your drop dead money is the most expensive money you'll ever get. Mm-hmm. And essentially what he's saying is that to make a real fortune, like you have to be forged in the fire. And if you are second or third generation, it's no fault of your own, but you just definitionally cannot be forged in that same fire. And they're trying to craft the narrative that these guys are of the same stuff.
Like battle tested.
Yeah, they're the same stuff. I mean,
I still subscribe to the great man theory of real estate. I feel like the delegation only works to a certain point. As long as the patriarch is in the building or in the office, all the relationships kind of end up there.
I agree to the extent that it's in the families. If you are creating a fun business and you're just making widgets of risk-adjusted returns, like that's a different story. But for these families...
100%. I mean, like John Gray has real juice.
But there are guys below him who are like legit. I mean, look at Jeff Blau, related, like same thing. Like those guys are as good as it gets. But if you are a family and you're investing off your family balance sheet, think about it this way. So, my dad was a lawyer for some folks in the 80s. And one of the guys was in a workout. They fly down to Texas to go talk to the lender. They give this presentation to the president of the bank. It's, a rural bank, not in Dallas, not in Houston. Their client owes the bank a ton of money. Mm-hmm. They give this presentation. Here's how we're going to pay you off. We're going to work you out. We're going to do all this, that, and the other. And the guy who owned the bank, it was his family bank, puts his boots on the table and says, son, that was a wonderful presentation. Now tell me when your client's going to get in here, sit in that chair and tell me he's going to pay me my money back.
That's straight out of A Man in Full, dude. I remember the boardroom scene when the guy goes in.
It's funny when that book came out. My dad read the scene and he was dying laughing because he's like, that was literally what happened with this guy. But the point being that if you made this company, it's a different thing. If George Perez is sitting across from a lender or sitting across from an LP being like, I guarantee you this is going to work, or I guarantee, like, I will pay you back, or this project is going to generate returns. That's a different thing than if his son's doing it. It just is.
So how do you kind of emerge from the shadow? I don't think these profiles are quite it. If you're a clear-eyed enough reader of some of these puff pieces, you know that this isn't really doing what it's supposed to do, except maybe it's something that goes on their wall in their new corner office. I don't really see the benefit of a lot of these, besides maybe raising the profile, but not in the way that you would imagine makes sense.
The one that I thought was closest to this, and there was still a bunch in there that I thought was kind of bizarre, was the one about the Zeckendorfs and Adi Clarkson.
Artie. Yeah, Artie's in charge.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Zeckendorf family, legendary dynasty in New York real estate. 15 Central Park West was the two brothers, Arthur and William Lee. And Adi Clarkson, which is a project we talked about a few weeks ago, is the deal we're talking about here. And apparently Arthur's son, Artie Zeckendorf, is the catalyst or the man behind the machine on this deal, according to this new piece in the Real Deal.
Yeah, because they're trying to make it seem like he made the investment decision. Maybe he did. I don't know. But that's one where it doesn't have him standing in a hallway in a suit with, no tie, a couple buttons unbuttoned. Mm-hmm. It talks about like him making the investment decision, him pushing for it, him getting, helping like structure the deal, convincing Atlas that they were the best partner, convincing his family to come on because they do invest capital off their own balance sheet into these deals. So that one I think I kind of get. And it's a good launching off point, because if that's their last deal, because they're in their 60s and they only do, a handful of these per decade, then people need to know that there's a new sheriff in town and that he's got his spurs, so to speak.
One of the things that I think about a lot is New York City real estate titans have always, and real estate titans across cities, Miami, definitely true for the Perez's, etc., have always been so closely tied to the fortunes of the city that they live in, movers and shakers in the broader fabric of the city. And their sons and daughters have to inherit that mantle too, right? They also have to step into this image of civic champions of the city. And that's hard to do as well.
You walk around and you can't go 3 blocks in Midtown without seeing the Rudin name somewhere. Think about in the 70s when New York was going bankrupt. And
Lou Rudin prepaid the property taxes and convinced others to do the same, which helped a lot.
Just a capital G great man. He convinced a ton of real estate owners, big machers in the city, to prepay their property taxes to help the city with their fiscal deficit in the 70s when they were at risk of going bankrupt. Can you imagine that today?
No.
And we've talked ad nauseum about people screaming about New York being like, if you don't lower my tax bill, I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And, here we have a great man saying, like, I want to help the city. And that's, I think, the legacy you kind of step into if you're in one of these families.
Yeah, 100%. There's a apocryphal quote from the founding father of Dubai, Sheikh Rashid. And he said something like, my father drove a camel. I drive a Land Rover. My son will drive a Mercedes, but his son will ride a camel. And it's like, that's the constant fear in these families, right? Like, are you able to maintain the fortune? Are you able to grow the fortune? Are you able to be a good steward of the fortune? And are you able to land the covers in some of these trade publications? I think they're all very important questions.
Yes, they are.
That's it for the Promote podcast this week. Nepo babies, they're taking over the world, and they're making sure that you know all about it. California's most powerful NIMBY weapon has been gutted. Will it be enough to get developers back to building? And 625 Madison, well, it illustrates just why New York real estate is so damn tasty.
And why, if you want to jack up the rents on Mark Holiday, you better make sure you make good on your mezz payments.
You absolutely have to do that. A shout out again to our sponsor for this episode, Vesto. See how its service gives CRE players a single, clear point of access for all their bank accounts by going to Vesto.com. That's VESTO.com. A reminder, hit us up at partnerships@thepromote.com if you want to reach our audience. That's partnerships@thepromote.com.
Like, share, subscribe, carrier pigeon, side of a bus.
But really, guys, the best way to help us out is tell fellow CRE junkies in your life about us. It makes a huge difference early on. Will, thank you so much. That was a blast.
Thank you.
Ciao.